All right, everyone. A think tank called Just Facts has come out with analysis of the 2008 election, and they're claiming that upwards of 5 million illegal immigrants may have voted in that election. Looking at this, they are an independent think tank. However, they do lean right. It's a conservative think tank at the same time. So the real number is lower than that. However, the real number is also considerably higher than zero, and that's what we get all of the time when the specter of voter fraud is raised. Basically, people who are like Democrats or whatever, they're like, oh, it's just racist or something for some unknown reason. Now, requiring an ID to vote is problematic for, again, totally unknown reasons. I would hazard a guess that there is systemic voting fraud in certain parts of the country. The real risk has never been that it's going to flip like a presidential election. There's not a huge risk of that. You would need quite a large number of people concentrated in certain areas to do so. You'd think you'd definitely have to target specifically very competitive states. Like imagine you're trying to you want voter fraud to flip Texas blue or California red. Okay, you only need a few million people to be able to do that in a coordinated effort. I think it would probably be caught. I think it may become a problem because it would be very, very easy to tell that there had been fraud committed. Instead, you don't get that many tales where you actually see evidence of anything beyond, oh, someone voted twice. Major crime, but, it didn't flip an election. The big risk, ultimately, is in close races at the state level. Because assuming that turnout among those that are voting fraudulently would be the same, then it could definitely flip an election. Yes, you could see a governor or a senator or something elected because of voter fraud. It's absolutely possible. Presidency, less likely. Any truly national office, for an office that's voted for by literally everyone through the Electoral College in the manner of the presidency, less likely. Thankfully, most races in this country are so desperately partisan at this point and so lopsided that voter fraud can't really touch them. But then you do have swing states, like imagine that there is systemic voter fraud in these midterms with regards to maybe the Missouri Senate race, where it's a statistical tie and has been for months between Hawley and McCaskill. A few thousand votes may separate the winner and the loser in the end. It may be very, very close. It may be one of those elections where essentially they're looking at tenths of a percent differentiating the winner from the loser. A very, very small number of people in a race which may have abnormally low turnout anyway, for all we know. That could be a big, big problem. It does need to be looked into, but the real number is neither anywhere near as low as the liberals claim, nor anywhere near as high as this think tank is claiming. They're saying more than 5 million. I deeply doubt that. But hundreds of thousands? Yeah, possibly. Not enough to flip a presidential election maybe, but certainly enough so that in a very close race, yes, it could absolutely change the political landscape. Due to voter fraud in one state-level race, you could see the Senate be blue or red at the end of the midterms. We've got to understand that in some cases it's a matter of a few hundred or thousand people, and that's literally it, or in a close gubernatorial race. Certainly in a mayoral race, certainly in local politics, voter fraud could be a huge problem. Certainly, especially within large, sort of municipal city centers like mayorship of New York or something like that. Again, even though there are quite a few people voting, the possibility that local machine politics will make use of illegal voters is higher. And also, these people are being used as pawns by parts of the political establishment insofar as they're being consistently told, hey, people on the left love you. Look at those evil people on the right hate you. So, do what you need to do. We don't need an ID. You're not allowed to vote because you're illegally here, but, you don't need to show an ID. So I don't know, what's your name? I guess there's no way for us to corroborate it. We can't ask you that question because for some reason, asking for a driver's license or a state ID or something, asking for a piece of mail would be too much for them. I go and I show up at my voting place, did in the primaries, and I will, in the general, I will be voting in the midterms, obviously. If you're not planning to, by the way, if you're an American eligible to vote and you're not planning to vote, shame on you. No, you definitely need to go vote. Vote for Mickey Mouse if you have to in your state level race. Vote me in. Vote for Styx Hexenhammer for every position, and it'd be hilarious. No. What'll end up happening is I'll go there and I don't need to show an ID. I give them my name. But the thing is, like in small town America, it's a little bit different. When I show up there, I actually recognize multiple people that are physically there. Like one of the dudes that was doing work there at the polls, I think is the same dude that works at the local recycling center. So yeah, I see him on a weekly basis. He knows that I live in the community. He can vouch for that. But if you're in New York City, or you're in the middle of Chicago or something, yeah, probably not. No, you probably don't even know your next door neighbors. You know, that's just sort of the way that it is. In urban settings, it's worse. I think we definitely need to look into this. The problem is the left doesn't even want to study the issue. They say, well, it's self-evident that voter fraud is not a problem. We don't need a national ID or anything like that. We don't need to require that people prove who they are to be able to vote. It's self-evident that it's scarce as hen's teeth for anyone to vote fraudulently, so we should do nothing about it, conduct no studies. But by the way, these people who are conducting studies are totally wrong. Why don't you conduct your own studies then? Why don't you have a liberal think tank look through the numbers? I bet you'll be able to find at least tens of thousands of instances of fraud. Again, that won't flip a presidential election, but it could flip a mayoral election. It could get a representative in a close race elected or not elected. It could certainly screw with the primary system. And you get a lot of open primary states that don't have voter ID laws anyway, including here in Vermont. No ID. You just show up, you say, hey, you a Democrat or a Republican or a progressive. There's actually a progressive ballot because the state is so blue. And you know, you fill it out and there you go. All you got to do is make sure that you give them your name. But the thing is, like, you could literally, if you were skilled at all, you could glance at the paper and you'd see a bunch of names and see who's been marked down and who's not. You could probably get away with it, yeah. Now, you shouldn't, because if you get caught, I think it's like, what, 5-10 years in prison. But it's possible. But the thing is, like Vermont, again, small town America, you probably, in many of the communities here, you know your neighbors. You probably recognize someone working at the polling place. A little bit different from maybe in a big city center. So this think tank is wrong on their final number. It's nowhere near 5 million. But they're right in that it's a problem. It should be addressed. It would be nice to have a truly independent study by a nonpartisan think tank eventually come forth. But they're afraid to because they'll get called racist by like the SPLC or something. They're honestly terrified of getting called, they're terrified of getting called xenophobic or anti-immigrant or something like that, as though this had anything to do with the cohesion of our voting system within the United States. I would wager the final number is in the high tens of thousands, low hundreds of thousands. Somewhere between, I'd say, 80 or 90,000 fraudulent votes in any given major election to maybe 300,000 or 400,000. It's probably somewhere in that range, I would guess. I don't think it's anywhere near this prevalent, but it's not zero. And that is enough in a close race to flip it. Yes, it is a problem. That's about all. Peace out.